Hi everybody, it's Megan Fielder here from Algebra Elevated, and today I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about two of my favorite digital resources to use, Google Sheets and Google Slides. So now that we're kind of past the initial pandemic panic and we now have a little more time to plan out our resources, you might be trying to figure out when to use Google Slides and when to use Google Sheets. Well, here I am to talk to you about the benefits and disadvantages of each one of those. So I have a few notes with me here, but we're going to get started with both applications first. Benefit of both applications in and of themselves is they are both free. So if you have a Google account, if your students have a Google account, they're free and pretty user-friendly to use. The second thing I love about both resources is the sharing capabilities. So the students can share these resources with each other, so they can collaborate on Google Slides or Google Sheets resources. They can also share it back with you as the teacher. So therefore, you're not trying to email things. It's very quick to collaborate between students and between teacher and students, and even expand that between staff members or other stakeholders for those children. Another great thing about both of these resources is the auto saving. Especially if you have younger students, that feature is life-changing for them in and of themselves. They close things so easily, they lose things so easily, and that auto saving can help just protect their work a little bit better. Secondly, it's with that auto saving is that a lot of it can be recovered or found if it's misplaced. So if they put it in a weird folder or no folder at all, you can usually find it somewhere. Another great thing is templates. There are great templates out there, tons of resources out there. So if you don't have an idea of how to use it, you can usually find something to start with that too. Now there is a downside to both of these resources, and one of those, at least for me as a math teacher, is that it can be difficult for students to show their work sometimes. So that is not the easiest thing, but there are definitely ways around that. So now that you have a little bit of information about both resources, we're going to jump in and talk a little bit more about just Google Slides. So my favorite part about Google Slides is that it starts as a blank canvas. It is wide open, everything is movable, you can even place things off the slides themselves because of the freedom in the PowerPoint setup, okay? So that's a great advantage for Google Slides. Another great advantage is that you can link each slide to a future slide in the presentation. This can help with some feedback. If students click on the right answer, it could send them to a message that tells them that. If they click on the wrong answer, it could send them to a message that tells them that, as well as some feedback or help on how to do it correctly. Or you can link them, if you're doing a choice board, it could link them to where they need to do what they need to do next. If they're doing a scavenger hunt, it can link them to where they need to go next. So that linking capability really helps with the navigating of the resource itself, especially if it's a longer slideshow. Now, another advantage for Google Slides is that you can leave text boxes for your students. So you could ask them a question and then leave a space right there. You could say, type your answer here, or they could insert their own text box even, and that can put that answer right in the activity or in the slideshow presentation. And it's usually pretty user-friendly for the students to kind of navigate that situation. Now, a con to Google Slides. I have 3 of them. First is the immediate feedback. So besides linking, the immediate feedback opportunities is kind of limited. So I feel like a lot of times with Google Slides, the students do the activity, they send it back to me, and then I can give them that feedback. It's not in real time necessarily, unless it's linking and then it's kind of button clicking. That's how they get that feedback. So that's a little bit of a downside. Another downside to Google Slides is that present mode or slideshow mode that they've recently renamed it to and edit mode have different capabilities. So in slideshow mode, students can click on links a lot easier, but they can't type in a text box. They have to be in edit mode to type in a text box. But then if they're in edit mode, when they click on a link, they could actually mess with the link and that can be problematic. So the preview versus edit or slideshow versus edit mode can be confusing about which one to use, but then on top of that, it can also be difficult for students to work within that mode sometimes. And that comes to the last difficulty with Google Slides, and that is that it's super easy for students to delete things accidentally. So part of that blank canvas is that you can move things around really easily, but you can also get rid of things very easily. Now, a good way around that is to set the background of the slide, whatever you don't want the students to engage with. If you set that on the background, which there are tons of tutorials out there, and I'll be talking about that more in a future video. If that's something that you want to do, that's great. But then on top of that, you put all the student pieces that they can mess with, and they can still accidentally delete those. So I always tell my students, undo is your friend. If you accidentally do something, just click undo, it'll come right back. But that can lead to some confusion at times. So now that we've talked about Google Slides, let's move on to talking about Google Sheets on their own. Couple great things about Google Sheets. First of all, conditional formatting, you can color code responses, especially numerical responses, to be red if they're wrong or green if they're right, or whatever color of the rainbow for whatever the reason that you're telling them. So that color coding is super easy, or not necessarily super easy, but very, very beneficial and helpful for the students. The other thing, and that kind of comes with that, is the immediate feedback. So whether it is color coding or whether you have a formula that makes something appear when a certain answer is submitted, it's that real-time immediate feedback. Something happens as a reaction to something the student does, and that's something that Google Sheets can provide. Now, with that immediate feedback, you can also kind of expound on that to be the activity could be completely graded without any help from the teacher. So if it's giving the student immediate feedback, that's also giving you as the teacher immediate feedback on that student's grade. And when they submit it back to you, you might not have to do anything to give them a grade, which that is a great way to reduce how much time you spend grading, is assign activities like that. And I have a whole nother video about other tips for reducing time spent grading. So I'll link that above so that you can check that out. But including auto grading activities like Google Sheets is one of my favorite ways to do that. Now, another great thing about Google Sheets is that you can secure the sheet so that it gives you a warning, or gives the student a warning when they are trying to edit somewhere that they shouldn't be editing. So that is, it doesn't prevent them from actually doing it, but it gives them a heads up, like, if you do this, you are touching something that was not intentional for you to be doing. And that might kind of deter them or make them realize that they might need to undo whatever they're trying to do. Now, some cons for Google Sheets. Admittedly, it can be a little difficult to learn for both teachers and then students on their end what they're looking at. Now, it's not impossible by any means, but it just might be a little more difficult than the blank canvas of Google Slides. Along with that is that the structure for Google Sheets is a little more rigid. It's created with this cells and more block type structure. So if you really, really like circles, when you're working in Google Sheets, that's going to be a little hard to integrate into the sheet. You can merge cells, you can make them whatever size you want, but you're still stuck a little bit in that more block style. It's not as free movement. You can't layer things as easily as obviously you can in Google Slides. Then another thing is that you can use formulas, obviously, in Google Sheets, and it helps you get that auto grading sensation that we were talking about before. But those formulas can be particular at times. They might not always work, and that can be frustrating for both students and teachers. And along with that con, another one is that Sheets sometimes lends itself more to numerical answers. There are definitely ways to integrate word answers in there as well, but you want to keep it short so that phrasing is not as much of an issue, where in Google Slides you could enter a text box and then students have the ability to enter or type in whatever they feel like the answer would be. They could explain their answers a little more clearly or given that space a little bit better in Google Slides than Sheets. So both these resources Absolutely fantastic. I love them both, but there's a time and place for both of them. If I'm having students work on a project together where they're trying to like display something they learned or explore some topic, I'm probably going to have them work in Google Slides because of that blank canvas, a lot more free motion, and then they don't need that immediate feedback because they're submitting their project. If I am working with more worksheet style questions where I want them to practice factoring, say, I want them to get the right answer. There is one answer out there. I might do that more in Google Sheets because it will give them that immediate feedback and it can be set up to grade that for me so that I don't have to later. Now that you've learned a ton about Google Slides and Google Sheets, hopefully you might want to try out some new activity with them, like maybe one of my partner picture activities in Google Sheets, or maybe scavenger hunt activity in Google Slides. But regardless of how you use them, hopefully you will see that there are amazing benefits to both programs, and you just need to figure out which one would be more right for your students and for what type of activity that they are doing at the moment. Thank you so much for sticking with me as I talked about two things that I absolutely love using in my classroom. Please like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this video. And more videos about technology resources will be coming soon. So look out for those. Talk to you soon.